We want to call our August 9th, 2021 committee meetings to order. Want to remind commissioners, if you haven't already done so, please turn your mics on. Chairman Hahn of the Education Committee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I call the Education Committee to order. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak, make a comment or anything this time? You have 5 minutes. No one? Okay, at this time, I'd like to see, welcome Dr. Jeff Perry, Director of Schools. Give us a rundown on Lincoln Elementary.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, certainly another pleasure to be here with you this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you. Right now, we are requesting a funding resolution. We have sent that out to you. I believe that the mayor had sent that to you earlier. It is for the construction of a new Lincoln Elementary School, and the site is Gateway Service Park. We'll show you where that is in just a moment. We are requesting $22 million, as we have said in the past. Also in that resolution, we wanted to make sure that the Hamilton County Board of Education, of course, has some commitment to that too. So we're committing $5 million, at least $5 million to the Lincoln Elementary project, and another $5 million to the Lincoln Middle. And both of those amounts are coming from the ESSER funding from that 3.01 that we had that we spoke to you last time about. Also, we will accept any responsibility if there's any excess in terms of the $22 million and then the $5 million that we're putting in, then we are responsible for all the rest of that. So we'll make sure that the commission realizes that they only have the $22 million commitment. And then also in return, we'll return any surplus. So if the numbers come back in cheaper than that, then we'll return that money also at that point. We talked about some of the renovations, and that's actually advantages and disadvantages. We actually put that into the resolution. You know, this does provide another 50-year solution to that. It eliminates those needs for the mobile units, and if you looked at that, there was almost $1 million in there for classroom mobile units that we would have to just simply move kids out to and then really have no other use for those. All the traffic and parking issues that we talked about in the past. It does also address that middle school need. One of the big things that we really feel for this now, that vacated area then gives us a staging ground. And we need that staging ground because then we can move kids out of a regular classroom, put them in that area, and then we can do the project quicker and faster if we don't have to put kids somewhere else. And so that makes it a cheaper process when we do Lincoln Middle School, and then also when we have those issues in the future. It does increase the playground area for the elementary school folks. And one of the other big things, anytime that we're doing renovation while school is going on, that creates a number of safety issues for us. It creates a number of noise issues. It creates, just with the odor of the paints, the glue, some of those kind of things create some problems. So it eliminates those kind of areas. And then, as I said before, it does provide that staging area. Here is the preliminary site location. Down at the bottom is we have 160 in Martin Luther. This is the Gateway Service Parkway. This is Rich Foods up in here, up in that area. So it would be that large area that is mowed. So as you go down Martin Luther, you would have that area right there. That's where the large power lines come across through there. So just to kind of get you oriented where we are. We do have an option on this particular property now. So the thing that we're doing, and the thing that we always do, this would be Martin Luther down through here. And then this is where the school would be located. So it would be located here toward the back of the property in this area. And the reason why we want to do that, of course, is get far away from the road, and then also get away from those power lines. So the power lines would actually run more in this area right here where we would have the parking in some of those areas. So this is the power line. You can see that the school is far removed from that. We would have the parking here with the entryway coming in, and then that would allow us, of course, to be able to get far away from the power lines, and we feel comfortable about that. We have also checked with state, and that's plenty of room to get away from power lines anytime that folks would have a concern about that. And it does push us far enough away that we don't have to worry about any dangers or issues associated with the traffic on either one of those roads. So as we looked at this particular piece, we did look at site locations. That's one of the things that you always want to consider anytime that you're building a school, because just the site itself could cause you a lot of issues, or it could be an advantage to you. And some of the advantages we think is that it is within the attendance zone, so we don't have to change attendance zones. You know, before we were talking about some properties that were outside that attendance zone, and that would kind of create some issues for us. The access to all the utilities with water, sewage, and power, all of that is there. We do think there's a little bit of question about sewage. Make sure we have gravity flow. As long as we can get through to Morristown Utilities, who would provide the sewage for us, we think that they would allow us access a little bit across their property to get to there, so we feel good about that. The water and the power is there. We also feel, if you go back to this piece here, if you've not looked at it, this is a relatively flat area. We don't think there'll be a great deal of site preparation work to that. If you've ever done any construction, and I know that you are looking at some construction there with the jail, and you know that site work can very much dictate the cost of the project and what it takes to get up out of the ground. This would be very limited work that we feel we would have to do to that particular site to make it ready. Also, it would have ample acreage. It's 32 plus acres, depending on how much of that we actually buy, but it's as much as 34 acres, but somewhere in that neighborhood. Also, we have multiple entry and exit points that we actually have the ability to get up through and go out Sulphur Springs or come on out to 160 there. And that does make a lot of difference to us in terms of being able to get buses and cars out in different ways if possible. And then also the way that we do have it is that we would have the access of being able to bring cars out this way, buses out this way, and if we didn't go out the back way, then we at least have the ability to bring everything out to the front there and keep those cars and buses separated when we get them onto our campus. So we do think that's an important part. Right now, not all of our schools have that ability to separate car and buses, and that just creates a number of problems for us. Also, we do have a sufficient area then to do the playground and play areas for students, for elementary students. That certainly is an important piece. And then the other part that we've done is we've actually positioned the school on an area there that we can expand it if necessary. So if we do see an increase in student enrollment that we'll talk about a little bit later, then we do have the ability to add on to this without having to buy additional land, and we will create a situation to where it is expandable if we need it to do so that we don't have to duplicate some of the other costs. Concerns, we're always worried about soil suitability. So what we've done with this is the school would be up in this area. We've had the engineers and architects go ahead and lay it out back in this area. And while we do that is that once we get this done, we will do soil borings all where the major foundation pieces will go, just to make sure that we don't have bad soil, to make sure that it is compacted, to make sure that we're not on a sinkhole, to make sure that we're not on a great deal of rock. And so if we find anything that is really non-suitable for that, then we can always reposition the school just a little bit if necessary to keep us away from having to do a great deal of earthwork there, because the difference about moving dirt and moving rock is substantial. And when you're talking about every square yard that you've got to move, there is a great deal of cost associated with that if it's rock. So we'll find out. We don't think there's a large number there. We actually think some of this was probably filled a little bit later or a little bit earlier in the past. And so we'll check that out with the soil borings to make sure we're okay with that. We are a little bit concerned, of course, about the exit to and from 160. You know, that is a busy road, and of course, that does worry us to some degree. But of course, we do have on Union Heights, you know, we actually come out onto that road also. And then over at Witt, we have some of the similar kind of issues. And so if we can get some speed zones in there for that time that we have school and get folks to slow down, we normally don't have a lot of issues with that. Because you know, most of you have lived here in this community all your life, and you know that some of our schools, of course, come out onto busy roads, but that is a concern for us. No site would be perfect, and then the power lines, which we think we've mitigated those concerns with that. But the bottom line to all this is we do think there'll be limited site preparation, which would actually save us a ton of money on down the road as we begin to work on that. So I know you might have trouble seeing this on the screen, but you do have it in your book also. Then this is a rough construction schedule. So as we begin the schematic design, we will start that in September if we can get funding for that. And then we'll go ahead and do the complete schematic designs in November. Then we'll go ahead and review that mid-November, and then we'll begin the design development. And so that first is just a basic kind of concept of the school. Then each time we talk about one of these dates, we get closer and closer to the finished project. So when we then review the complete set of documents, that will be somewhere in January. And then sometime in mid-January, we'll actually begin the construction documents. The construction documents are actually that detailed set of documents. You've probably seen those before. Have a set of blueprints, and there'll be hundreds of pages. And in those hundreds of pages, every door, every light switch, everything will be detailed in that. So by January, we think we'll have those construction documents done. And then as we send those out to the fire marshal, that normally takes a month or so for that to complete. And the reason why I showed you this is that if we back up, we always want to be on that critical path. We want to be able to start construction in March or April, just as soon as it dries up from the winter. We want to get started because we can do more work in April through September in those couple months than we can do all the rest of the year long because of weather. So if we can get it started at that time, that really puts us ahead. And the quicker we can get started, the sooner they can get finished. The sooner they can get finished, then the more money that we save in that whole piece. So try to get bids back in April. Go ahead and send those contracts out mid-April, and then construction would start. At this point, we're not really sure 100%. Normally, we can build a school of this size. We can build this in about 18 months. If you've done any construction work lately, the availability of subcontractors, and then especially the availability to get certain parts right now is extremely difficult to do. And so we've said on this for 2 years for the actual construction piece. It may not take that long. If the virus is somewhat mitigated, if we have the availability of parts and some of these other things, then it could go a lot quicker. I know that on the small project that we did out at West, we waited for months on certain HVAC systems that had computer chips and some things in it, and we were just waiting on those. So it may go quicker than that. It just kind of depends on what we end up with construction availability of subs and contractors, and the availability actually of equipment and supplies. This is the drawdown schedule, and we call it a drawdown schedule. What ends up happening is that we have a certain amount. If the project is $26 million, when do you need that $26 million? You don't need it all up front. You know, there are certain times that you will need certain percentages of that, and this is especially important to Mayor Britton and the rest of the financial group in terms of when do we have to have that money. Normally what happens is the A&E firm, that's normally about 5.5%. The schematic design, so to get us through that schematic design, that's about 15% of their fees. The design work, getting to those design documents, is another 30%. The construction documents would be another 30%. The bidding is about 5%, and then through the construction monitoring will be about 20%. So overall with this, the A&E firm, it's about $1.2 million. Somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on the actual cost of the building, because they are a percentage basis. So you can see that in the first 6 or 7 months, we would need 100, well, not 100% of that, because actually the letter E, they will monitor the construction, and then they draw down all the way to the very end of the project. So we would need roughly about $1 million as we start this project, as we start this process, going through the schematic designs and then through the construction documents. Then really the bulk of the money goes through the contractor's fees. Now, all of this will differ greatly, depending on who we get, how fast they move, all of those kind of things. But normally, in the first 1 or 4 months, they're going to need about a quarter of the whole project, so we'll need to draw down about 25% of the total amount. Months 5 through 10, they'll need about 60% of that, and then in the last little bit, it would be 15%. So you can kind of look at this as that a little bit of money up front, big bulk of it in the middle when they start actually buying equipment and material and steel and all those kind of things. First couple months will be very limited simply because we're digging footers, we're doing earthwork, we're not buying a lot of materials at that time, and so it's a little bit less involved. But then as things begin to ramp up, that's where you see the majority of that. So the reason I showed you this is there's going to be limited county commission commitment until the summer of 2022. So we would be able, as long as the ESSER funding comes through, which we see no problems, we're going to be able to cover the first part, and then really a lot of that pieces, or a lot of those pieces, up until the summer. And so financially, just in terms of how you plan and how you get ready for this, we'd really need very little money until the summer of 2022 as you go through the planning for some financials. We gave you this last time, so I won't go over this again, and you have it in your packet. This is a school, the projected cost for about a 600 elementary school. And when we say 600, that really can stretch. It can be 500, it can go to 700, depending on how many you put in a classroom. If you end up putting 15 in a classroom, then of course it's going to be less. If you put 20 in a classroom, it's going to be for more. So with that, those estimates are just estimates with that. And then we showed you actually the one that if we actually increase that to 800, it would be the additional $2 million to bring it up to 29 if we wanted to do that. We are building the school based on this, though, for 600. So when we're talking about this, it is for 600, that 600 to 700 student enrollment school. The design program, we actually are designing this for that 600 to 700 student school. We are building this to expand, and one of the things that we are doing now, anytime that we have new construction where we're worried about that we may see some enrollment increases throughout the county, is that we go ahead and make sure that there's enough land to build onto that school if necessary. We actually go ahead and oversize a little bit of the HVAC. We oversize some of the water supply and some of those kind of things. And when we stub it out at the end, then all we got to do is connect to that and bring it on into the new sections of the building. Doesn't cost us that much more to do that. But if we did it in the future and had to upgrade all those things, then it would cost us more. So we would do some things to just be able to expand and add on to some of these wings so that we could do this at a very cost-efficient kind of way if these new housing developments brought in a large number of kids and we had to rezone to do some things to meet them. We would consider increasing square footage if the bids came in lower, and then we saw that we could do the 800 school for the same price. However, we would come back to this commission and say, do we want to do that? Or do we want to stick to the 600 and just go from there? Do we want to make it a little bit bigger so we'd already have the classroom space? By that time, too, we would know to some degree what all this new housing developments is going to actually mean in terms of students. We get a lot of students from that 180,000 to 250,000 range house. If it's a lot more than that, we don't get a lot of students from that. If it's a little bit lower than that, a lot of times that's a one-bedroom kind of situation, which we don't get a lot of students from. And so as we begin to see what the results are of the housing, then we can kind of project a little bit about how many students we would get. And so we can look at that later. But right now we're committing to the 600 piece. Also, the thing that we have talked about as a school board, and I've talked to you about, is full utilization of facilities. Right now, we've got some schools that are completely full. We've got some schools that are about at 85 to 90% capacity. If we need to rezone to make sure that we can operate and get every school as full as it can be so that we don't have particular schools that are overflowing and other schools that are underutilized. So we understand that we have to do that. Also, the other piece that we'll commit to you, and I think this is something that we've had some experience with, is we'll do the value engineering from day one. Is that you look at every single thing to see, is it essential? Can you take this square footage out to make sure that you can get the best value for your buck on that? And so as we begin to do this, we look at certain things within the building to make sure that it is compatible with construction companies. What we always see, and I know you've experienced this just a little bit too as you've worked on the jail, is that the architects will create something, and it makes it much more difficult for the construction companies to build that. As we begin to talk and have conversations, we'll try to marry those two things up so that when they design something, it is more efficient to build. And just a prime example of that, for example, if you were using a sheet of plywood and you wanted something to be 13 inches, if you knock it down to 12 inches, then you can get 4 strips out of that piece of plywood. But sometimes the architects and engineers do not understand that as much, and so when they make something 13 inches, then all of a sudden we've got that particular problem throughout the building, and we can identify some of those areas to make sure that we maximize the use of the dollars that we have. Right now, we are estimating this at about $235 a square foot. You know, that is high. I know that you guys have seen that also with the jail, and that this cost is going up. You know, once we get to actually bidding this out in March of next year, it is our hope this will kind of drop down a little bit, and we won't have these particular costs this high. So we'll see as that's doing, but right now we're estimating it at that particular amount. So this evening our request is that it is our desire to go ahead and build the new Lincoln Elementary School on the Gateway Service Parkway. We're asking the board or the commission to approve the resolution, which will basically commit the commission to $22 million. And this would allow us to move forward. I think right now we can go ahead and begin the design work, and we can begin the site work in the spring, which is critical for us if we're going to utilize all the summer and all of that expanse of the construction window that we were to have. So, Mr. Chair, at this time, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Do you, you spoke a little bit about the land.
Yes, sir.
Have you got any alternative sites?
At this point, we really don't. You know, we have looked at multiple sites throughout the district or throughout the county. There's very limited sites that we do have. There are some other sites, but we're a little bit concerned that the site preparation cost of those would just be enormous.
What is the cost of the land out there?
$1.5 million.
Okay. Do we have, is that 1.5 included in these costs?
Yes, sir. The number that we gave you in that includes everything. Now, as we go back to that, we want to make sure that everybody understands this. There are certain things that we call soft cost, and so that would be, this includes all of the site work. This includes the purchase of the land. This includes the architects and engineering fees. That would include the furniture, fixture, and equipments, the FF&E. So this would be a total cost with this, and the resolution that we're asking you to pass is that's all that you're committing, is the $22 million, so that you are not, if anything else happens, then it's our responsibility to take care of that. So we feel pretty good about these numbers. Now, unless something just dramatic were to happen, but assuming that the land, the soilability, that works out, which we don't really have any reason to believe that it's not going to be good. And then unless just construction costs, just, I don't know that it can get much higher and still be a practical piece, but
What about the intersection with 160? I mean, I know you can't answer it definitively, but that's a dangerous intersection. I'm up through there quite a bit. That's a dangerous intersection there.
it is. We are concerned about that. That was one of our primary concerns. The good thing is one of the things that we have more concerned about going onto a highway of that nature, if our line of visibility is limited. You know, that if there's a sharp curve, if there's a hill and we can't see, you know, a couple hundred yards down the road, then that concerns us even more because those buses just don't have the ability to get to the next point. The line of sight there, we think is adequate, more than adequate.
You think
and
so?
then if we put a speed zone in there for early in the morning, and then when we release, we really shouldn't have a lot of problems with getting traffic onto that because, again, Union Heights is not the best situation in the world, and Witt is not the greatest situation in the world either. And then even the new road that comes down by Westview, we had some problems on the first day, but we always do that because more parents bring students the first day, and then it's gotten a little bit better. So that is a concern, and we won't diminish that particular concern. But the problem we run into, if it's close to easy access, then that's one of the issues. The further away that you get, then the more the costs are associated with everything else. So it's really one of those give and take kind of issues.
Well, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of problem at Union Heights nor Witt. I don't think we've had any real issues at either one of those places.
No, sir, we've not since I've been here. Now, of course, we're always concerned about it, and the county and the city have been great about, you know, placing cruisers there and cars there to kind of at least remind folks about that. So we've really not had those kind of issues, and we are fortunate that we have some very good bus drivers with some very good safety records, and they are careful about, you know, pulling out into those areas.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
would that be prudent to have a conversation with the state concerning that? I mean, I use that road as well quite often, and I understand that you understand it's a dangerous intersection. However, with industrial traffic in the area, commercial traffic in the area, it really will be a concern, not just safety, but congested.
Guys, now part of what we do with this, every time we do something of this nature, part of the requirements before we get state approval is we've got to do a traffic study.
Yes, sir.
So we work with TDOT and we talk to them about every entryway, every exit that we have. What is our plan that once we get onto a secondary road, then what is our plan to get onto the primary road? So all of that, we have conversations about that before we get approval from the state.
Okay.
So they would not allow us access onto that, onto Martin Luther, then onto 160
Sure.
until those things are done. So we would definitely have those conversations, and that's part of the conversation before we even start.
Of the acreage, go ahead, Jim.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I just want to make sure, is there a way that we can just don't use the intersection? Is there a way that we can get around just not using that intersection? It
Well,
really
you know,
is a
we
bad
have
intersection.
another access that we could go back and get out on Sulphur Springs, I believe that it is, on the backside.
And Mars Boulevard.
Yeah, and so we might be able to do that without even going out onto that, to 160. And I don't even know how many buses we would have that would go that way anyway.
Right.
Because most of our attendance area, I think, would be the other direction anyway, so.
The reason I say that is because the new road out there has those little J-turns.
Yeah,
At first, it was aggravating, but you know, really, there's been no wrecks.
yeah.
So, you know, that intersection, like you said, is limited. I'd
And
get away from it.
guys, anytime that we do a school, even before we look at cost, safety is our primary thing. And so with that, I really could not see the majority of our buses or even a large number of our buses coming out and turning left and heading toward 160. I just don't, that's not where the majority of our kids are. They would be in the other direction.
I agree.
Dr. Perry, is there ample distance between the school and the industrial plant that's there beside it?
Yes, sir. I think that there is plenty of room with that. You can see that we would, be placing the school, and again, part of it will determine what the soil compatibility is, but as we put something in here, there's a wall, not really a wall, but a bank area that goes up through there, and I think that there is sufficient area between where the school would be and that. And of course, we'd put up a fence too, to kind of keep students from going up there, and then also prevent anybody from coming down from that. But yeah, we don't think that there would be an issue for there, and especially in some of our schools right now, where we're in town, and actually our playground, the swings are right up against the fence, residential or commercial property right now. So we really feel like this one is as protected as much as any one that we have.
Dr. Perry?
Yes, sir.
In your resolution, it also lists $5 million to renovate the Lincoln Middle.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any totals on what that total renovation would be? So how much more the county's going to do in 2024?
As we begin to look at that, I think that the number that we gave you guys a while back was that it was $9 million or so to do everything. But if we can do the HVAC system, which we think that with the $5 million, we can do the majority of that. And we're actually holding, as long as the ESSER funding comes in, there might be an additional $1.5 million with that. If we can do the HVAC system, then a lot of the problems, extra cost that we had associated with redoing Lincoln Middle is going to be resolved, because now we got Lincoln Elementary that we can spill over into. The answer to that particular question is that we may have an additional $3 to $4 million, but it would be a lot less than what it would be if we still had Lincoln Elementary in that same building, because we can just switch some kids over, go in there, do those walls quickly. And part of the issue that we had with that, a lot of the renovation cost was that when we consumed space by hallways, then that ended up limiting classroom space. And when we limited classroom space, then we had to go outside the envelope to redo those particular classrooms. So if you kind of think about it, a 12 by 12 tile that's in the floor, that's $235. And so every tile that you got to put in is $235. If we don't have to transfer that outside the envelope, we can do that for a lot cheaper. So it may be even less than that once we get that vacated, that we don't have to breach the envelope of the building itself.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Dr. Perry, building this new school
Yes, sir.
and are moving some of the kids over in the Lincoln Elementary area now, how many more employees do you think you're going to have to put on? Have that number, or?
I don't really anticipate that we would have to put any, because both the elementary school and the middle school are self-sufficient. So they share a cafeteria, but they have their own staff. The guidance counselor is one for the elementary school, one for the high school, the nurse. So all of those kind of things, we don't really anticipate that we would need any significant number of staff to staff these, because both of them are self-sufficient. And the state requires that we have certain number of people for each elementary school and each middle school. So it's two standalone.
So how many students are in a class right now over there at Lincoln, in the middle school?
It would vary, but in a classroom, we would have anywhere between 15 and 20 some in each classroom, depending on the number of teachers we have at that grade level.
So it's small enough you wouldn't lower the amount of students in the classrooms?
Right now, what we're doing is that we're not thinking about hiring additional people to, have an additional classroom so we could lower the student-teacher ratio. We try to have a district average with that. And so regardless if this is at Lincoln Elementary right now or if it's at the new school. Now, what I do think will happen is that we'll take a classroom that has 20 kids in it right now, that they're crowding into a 600 square foot room, and we'll take those same kids and put now into a more appropriate area, 750 square feet. So won't be any number of increase with teachers or any really increased number of kids. It will just be that they're in a more appropriate
are you gonna need to put on more buses and bus drivers? Can't they all get out approximately the same time?
No, I don't think we'll have to do that. There'll be just a little bit of a difference because we would have to, pick up at the middle school and come to the elementary school. But what we do in every other school, we pick up the middle school kids and the elementary school kids with the same buses because we're only going to make one trip to Silver City Road.
Right.
We don't make multiple trips to there, so we would pick up all the students on that particular route and take them there. So I don't see that we would have any more drivers because we're not really expanding the number of students, the same number of students, and they're going to the same place.
Right.
So there'd just be the difference of the transportation
It
between.
would be like a 15-minute layover for one or the other?
And what we end up doing with that normally is that we have dismissal times that are just a little bit different, so that one school will dismiss at 3 o'clock and the other one dismiss at 3:15, and they'll start, in the
Okay.
mornings a little bit different, so that nobody is short any instructional time, so that we can use the same drivers to go pick up, so we can go pick up the kids with the one bus.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are you looking into maybe rezoning? I know at one time Fairview Marguerite was overcrowded. You talked about bringing those kids over to Lincoln and swapping back. Are you looking into doing that at the beginning?
The board is committed to doing that if we have to, and that goes back to that full utilization of facilities. I think it is our responsibility to make sure, before we ask for any additional facilities, is to make sure that we are fully utilizing all of our schools. So it probably wouldn't be Fairview Marguerite, but some of the kids around the Hillcrest area, that might be the kids that we would take. Because right now, Fairview is down a couple kids. Hillcrest, we still have the mobile units over there. So part of our capital improvement plan that I shared with you when I first came here was doing away with all the mobile units so we can get kids back in a building. And that's one of the things that we're looking at, that if we can make this just a little bit bigger and then take those kids, a couple of the kids from the Fairview area, or not Fairview, but Hillcrest area, and bring those kids to the new Lincoln Elementary School, we might be able to siphon off enough to do away with the mobile units and make sure that we're fully utilizing all of our facilities, because Hillcrest is pretty full right now.
Would that be true for the middle school kids too?
Well, now with the middle school kids, what we would have, of course, is with middle school kids, now that we've got the elementary school, we would have more availability to bring kids into there. So, yes, that is a possibility. We could end up doing that. Now, the only thing that comes close to closing down a school and consolidating a school is rezoning, because grandmother went there, mom went there, and their daughter's going to go there. So we do get a lot of that, but at the same point in time, we realize that we've got to accept some of the norms and some of the expectations of the community, but we also have to run this as a business too. We've got to make sure that we're good stewards of the money and that we're not wasting money on this. So if we need to rezone, we can do so. I've talked to the board about that a couple times, and I think that they are in agreement that we've got to use the facilities that we have.
And be rezoning just for elementary and middle?
Well, yeah, I don't really feel that we would have to do the high schools to rezone that, because the situation we would have with that is each one of our high schools have stayed pretty constant, somewhere around in the 1,500, and it's still the same way this year. The problem that we do is that we have to make sure that we try to rezone within the east and west community, because you don't want a kid going to an east elementary school and an east middle school and then have them go into a west high school. That's where we end up seeing some great resistance, is that when you've got to leave friends that you've had for the last 9 years and then end up having to go somewhere else, that's where we end up with problems. So we'd have to be thoughtful about that, of making sure that we don't break up some of those kind of situations, and we can do that. There's the availability of that is there.
Do you have any ideas about the old Lincoln Elementary?
Yeah, the thing that we would do with the old Lincoln Elementary School is that we're going to have to use probably 15–20% of that for Lincoln Middle. Because again, what we have to do, anytime that we do a renovation now, every classroom has to have 2 exits. And so as we close up those walls, we eliminate one of the exits for that back classroom. So now what we got to do is we got to create a hallway into there. As we create that hallway, then that will eat up square footage that we would have with each classroom. So with that, some of those classrooms are going to have to move over to Lincoln Elementary School, and we'll utilize that for those classrooms. And again, not go outside the building, because if we do work outside the current envelope, then that costs a lot more than doing it on the inside.
Okay.
And then there's also some situations that we've talked about too, that if we wanted to expand preschool, do some of those kind of things, then we do have that ability to do it in there. But the main thing that we would use the old Lincoln Elementary for is putting the middle school in there, the overflow that we would have to have for that, and then actually using that for a staging area for the next couple years, that if we had to do something at Meadowview, we'd have a place to put those students without having to get the mobile units, without having to do those kind of things.
Good.
Dr. Perry, on the building of the site itself, has there been any studies done on the soil yet?
No.
Okay, and is there a contingency in the event that you had to move too much rock to make it on the purchase of the land?
We do have a 10% contingency built into the whole, which is pretty standard. But what we will do, and I think this is the part that we have going for us right now, with 30-some acres, we can put the school where we need to. And so as we look, one of the things you can, not always, and I know some of you have lived here a long time, it doesn't always work that way, but if you look at the bank that goes up toward Rich, if you see a large number of rocks sticking out, that worries you. If you go onto a farm and you see rocks at the edge of the bank, or if you see rocks coming up, or you even see the ground swelling up where there's a rock ridge, that worries you. We've not seen any of that initially. And Trent and them did some work in there before. And at least the old conversation that we've had is that they really didn't run into those kind of issues. I'm a little bit more worried about compactability than I am with rock right now at this point. But that is what we will do the borings for, and to see what we have there. And then there's some things that we can do to mitigate that if we know up front. Like I said, we can reposition the school. We can do a lot of things to avoid those particular costs. And what we do is that the reason why we do this site work right here and why we put this on here, we will drill holes every 20, 30 foot or so. And we will make sure that as much as possible. Now, we have dug holes before, in the very distance, that 20 foot, we ran into a huge rock seam one time. But most of the time, we can identify if there are problems with the suitability of that particular site.
Dr. Perry, one quick one. The enrollment this year school-wide, how has it recovered from?
We had, right now we're up about 175 students in what we had on the third day of school last year. Now, just to let you know, on the first day of school, we were up 400 kids. But last year on the second day of school, we got a ton of kids that came in. And then on the second day of school, we were up about 100 and some. This year, 175. So we are seeing some students come back that were concerned about the virus, concerned about a lot of different things. So we have picked up some students that we did not have last year.
Right. One last comment, maybe you can remind me, or it seems like, if I remember correctly, we moved 9 cents from the school fund to general debt service to accommodate this.
Yeah, and I think that is an important point to remember, is that we took 9 cents out of the property tax, and then the 9 cents was then translated over to
debt service.
Well, sales tax, and that's how we picked up that particular money. And sales tax, as you guys know, if you don't collect it, then you don't give it to us, kind of thing. And so there's a piece there that part of what the mayor and I talked about just a little bit was going ahead that while the county was prosperous and doing well, and if sales tax continued to go well, then we were living off of that 9 cents on that area as opposed to the property tax piece. So there was a compromise given at that point too, to help offset some of the maintenance of effort and some of the things that the commission would have. Thank you.
Dr. Perry, we certainly appreciate your clarification.
Well,
Glad you could be with us tonight.
certainly do appreciate the commission and everything that you've done. Of course, we do have several of the staff members here from Lincoln Elementary School, and I think, as I said before, this is one of the most dedicated group of people I've ever seen. They work extremely hard and do a lot of good things in probably the worst educational environment that you could imagine, with the open classrooms and all that. Not only does it create safety issues, but it actually also creates a lot of serious instructional issues. So we know without a doubt that this is a big commitment. We understand that. We also know that there's other people right behind us, as we've said multiple times. They're coming with as many legitimate concerns, but this is a situation where this school is long needed in terms of some of the improvement just to help with the safety instructional issues. And I think we're at a very unique time at this point with the ESSER funding. If we can do this at this point, we can cover 1/6 of that cost and be able to assume some of that with the ESSER funding. And this would be one of the best times that we can to go ahead and complete this project. So, as always, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, certainly appreciate the opportunity to share information with you. I wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of information there. We'll have to digest. I'm sure all of you saw the resolution concerning this, and I'm sure you had a chance to read over it and whatnot. Any questions regarding any of that? While we have Dr. Perry here, I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay, I suppose it's time to take a roll call vote.
Oh, you need a motion and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, we sure do. Do we have a motion? I make a motion.
I second.
Oh, you can't
wait a
make
minute.
it. He can't.
He can make the motion.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll second.
Got a second, motion is second. Do a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Jeff Akers,
Yes.
Eileen Arnlund,
Yes.
Chris Cupshaw,
Aye.
Randy DeBoard,
Aye.
Thomas Doty,
Yes.
Tim Goins,
Aye.
Bobby Hahn,
Aye.
Tim Horner,
Yes.
Joe Huntsman,
Yes.
Wayne Neesmith,
Yes, in question.
Mike Reed,
Yes.
Howard Shipley,
Yes.
Jim Stepp,
Yes.
Taylor Ward.
Yes.
14, motion passes.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I've got
Okay.
a question on that.
Question,
I
yes.
asked for a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is this resolution for 22 million?
Yes.
It's for 22 million,
Yes.
separate resolution, okay?
For the schools.
For the school, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Hahn. At this time, Chairman DeBoard of the Finance Committee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order. Do we have any visitors that would like to address the committee? If not, in recurring business, in your expenditure reports, you will notice that there are some columns that have both zeros and the new balance. That's because of encumbrances that fall into last month's numbers. So you've had a chance to read over those. Do we have a motion to accept those?
I'll make that motion.
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any question? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries. In old business, we have none. In 4A, in new business, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of a not to exceed $42,400,000 and no dollars general obligation bond. Mr. Scott Gibson, could you give us a report on that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Scott Gibson with Cummins Securities. Chris Bessler sends his best regards. He could not make it tonight. He is normally here. This resolution would, if you authorize the resolution, it sets up for the, under state law, the initial publication in the paper and a 20-day protest period. This would authorize mainly for the schools and then some other stuff too that y'all have ongoing out there. This would not authorize the issuance of the debt. It only authorizes the publication of the resolution in the paper. Once it is done, and once y'all continue to move forward, you will come back at a later date and do the actual bond resolution and authorize the money. So this is just to check the box on the state law issue about the publication. And that is it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or any discussion? Yes, sir.
Question. This resolution is for $42,400,000. I'm reading what all is required in this. If y'all look at it, can read it along with me. Now therefore it be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners, Hamlin County, that the purpose of financing, construction, improvement, repairs, renovating, equipment for courtrooms, which we don't know about the courtrooms yet. We've not got our bid in on it to see what the bid's gonna be. Stormwater corrective, that's I don't know if that's for corrective, if that means that's how many people it's gonna take to staff this jail. Another issue was the detention facilities, how much the jail is going to cost us. And it's got schools in it, so schools was part of it, and they just approved $22 million for the school, but all this other education facilities, the library, stormwater drainage facilities, parks and recreation facilities, how much are we talking on each one of these items? We have no figures whatsoever on what we want to do with it.
I'm happy to answer that question. So this is a laundry list of capital projects out there. It would not cover any operations. As you know, under state law, you can only finance capital projects. So we have put in there everything that could come up that you could potentially do. And as I mentioned, this is only for the publication in the paper. If and when you decide to borrow or authorize more money and actually pass the bond resolution, you can use this list if you want to, or we can limit it down to particular projects and amounts once you get that far. But the main purpose of tonight was just to get the resolution published and get the public notice in the paper and get the 20 days out of the way, and then you will come back, and like I said, you will have the option, if you want, to draft the final bond resolution up to 42.4. You could end up doing less if you wanted, and then you can also tailor those resolutions to specific projects if y'all want to get in that discussion.
To do it, we could do it just for the $22 million for the school.
The county commission can do whatever it wants.
Okay.
At some point in the future if it so decides.
The reason I'm saying this, you've not been here, but I'll just tell you, we've got this out for new construction bids. Those won't be here till September. But yet we're putting in here, we want to use it for drainage. And there's a lot of pork in here. There's a lot of everything in here.
You're not authorizing borrowing the money. You're just authorizing publishing the resolution in the paper. So there is no pork in this resolution because nothing has been authorized to be borrowed. All you're doing is authorizing it to be published in the paper.
Okay, I'm calling the pork, like the parks and recreation. That's what I'm calling the pork.
But what we have done by doing this way is, as you work through your capital plan, not only the upcoming, but next spring or even next fall or even the following year, if is a project out there and you want to finance it, this resolution potentially could cover it. But like I said, as the school superintendent just said, I mean, they got to put stuff out to bid, they got to get stuff in, they may do dirt work on the project, they may have rock to move, they may not. There is all kinds of stuff that are unknown. And so you have a laundry list of stuff here to cover the unknowns, but you're not authorizing borrowing the money. And so you're just authorizing the publishing of the resolution in the paper. So that is step one. You have many more steps to go before you actually, put a resolution in front of the county commission and authorize a borrowing. So we're just checking the first box.
I'm not on this committee. I don't have a vote on it, but I had questions about it, and I heard nobody else ask a single question.
I'll ask one. Is this not the same as establishing a line of credit, like you would maybe your house?
Well, it's not quite that, because you're really not authorizing to borrow anything, but you are giving the public notice that you may use the money for these type of projects and giving them the chance to the 20 days that is required under state law for them to potentially protest. Now, hopefully, in this situation with the schools and everything else y'all want to do, there won't be any protests, but we will see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Any additional questions? If not, do we have
I'll make that motion.
motion
You've
to
already
approve?
got it.
Oh, we already got that.
I'm
You've already
sorry,
got it.
I'm sorry. So all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Aye.
One. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item 4B, Communication Systems Project. Commissioner Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission, members of the Finance Committee. I know you've got a lengthy agenda today, so I'll try to get to the meat of the issue that we're here to talk about. Although I am reminded how good it is to be back in East Tennessee after being in Nashville for 8 years. The commissioner that preceded me was from Memphis, and we were talking about a situation one day, and a fella, and he said, well, David, Mayor U1's going to have to talk to him. And I said, well, I don't care to. And he said, okay. He said, why not? And I said, why not what? He said, you say you don't care to talk to him. I said, no, I don't care a bit to talk to him. He said, that's what I'm trying to find out. Why don't you want to talk to him? I said, Commissioner, we're misunderstanding each other. I said, apparently your Memphis dialect is meeting my East Tennessee mountain dialect. I'll be glad to talk to him. So it's good to be back with you. About 8 months ago, the city of Morristown, which owns the public safety communications infrastructure for the city and county, knew that they needed to take a look at the system. Let me expand on that just a little bit. The system that we have is 45 years old, and I'll get into that a little more in detail in just a minute. But for those 45 years, the city had purchased that system, maintained the system, and basically, and I was well aware of this, Mr. Chairman, as county mayor, and Bill's aware of it. The county owns no public safety infrastructure communication system. The county has piggybacked off the city for 45 years, and there's no problem with that. But the city began to think about the current system, its disadvantages, and what needed to be done with it. And another issue that came forward was the communications technician, which many of you in the room know, Steve Peoples, is looking at retirement from the city. This is his system. He built this system 45 years ago when he was in private industry, and he has maintained this system for the entire time that he's been employed by the city. He is the only one that knows the system. We would be hard-pressed to get a private vendor to come in and work on this system. I doubt that they would do it. And Cap Mullins, you join in at any time because you use the system every day. So the city began to look at, we need to take a look at what we've got and what we need to do for the future. So they retained me, and over a 3-month period, I did a study of the history of the current system, the status of the system, and made recommendations to the city for improvements. One thing that kind of jumped out at me when I was doing this study is that this is the only thing in public safety that I can say with assurance covers preparedness, response, and recovery, all 3 areas of public safety concerns. You must have good communications in all 3 of those areas. When you do not have good communications, the public suffers and the first responders suffer. So I began to look at the system, and I did that through a series of interviews with city first responders, city department heads, county first responders, county department heads. Went to other counties and cities that had made changes in their system. I interviewed various vendors who would be interested in doing something with the system. And the one thing that jumped out at me that I was really surprised about is I was amazed at how much communication is occurring today between our first responders and the 911 center, and between our first responders and each other by cell phone. Now, why is that happening? It's because our system is so deficient. There are so many dead areas, and first responders are crafty. They will figure out a way to get around challenges, and they figured out how to do that by using cell phones, but it's dangerous to do that. There will be a situation that first responder cannot access a cell phone and cannot get assistance. So I would ask you to keep in mind as we talk about this. One of the adjacent counties, Greenville and Greene County, about 4 years ago, made significant changes in their radio communication system. And here's what prompted those changes. Their system was a 40-year-old system. They had an officer dispatched to Laughlin Emergency Room one day for an unruly patient. Pretty routine call. It happens, Chad, I would say frequently here to Morristown Hamlin, to the emergency room. The officer appears in the emergency room. As soon as he walks in, the patient loses it. A huge fight occurred. The emergency room was practically destroyed during this fight. The officer had no radio communications inside the emergency room. He could not get out on his radio. Eventually, hospital personnel had to help restrain this patient. There was thousands of dollars of damage to equipment, and calls were made, from the phones for assistance, but by the time they figured out what was going on, it took a while to get there. The city manager suggested that they take the officer's body camera and show it at a city council meeting. About 3 minutes into that fight, one of the city council members said, "I've seen enough. I don't have to see the rest of it." So they made significant changes in their public safety communication system by going to the state system, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. You see up on the screen here coverage maps, and let's look at that the first coverage map for just a minute. If we went to the state system, which is the recommendation, if we went to the state system today without any build out of any signal sites in Hamlin County, then you would have the situation that you see on this map. All of the green represents areas that the coverage would be positive. This is about a 96% coverage area. Now remember, it's with no build out. You see some deficiencies here around Statham Gap, and you see some deficiencies in the northwest part of the county. But basically, again, just by buying radios on the state system, we would go to this map today on mobile radios. Let's go to the next one. If we go to the state system and we build out the one signal site that we need to build out to tap into the state system, the map improves accordingly. You basically, the only areas that you have any dead space at all are in the northwest part of the county. And I'll tell you how those areas will be covered in a minute. But again, look at the other parts of the county. You have complete coverage. Next map. These are portables. We're talking today about mobiles and portables. And sometimes that's hard to differentiate if you don't work with it every day. But just remember that a mobile is an in-vehicle radio, and a portable is one that you have on your side. So today, if we just implemented the state Tennessee Advanced Communication Network portables, this is the coverage that you would have. It's better coverage than we have today. If we build out the one signal site that I'll talk about in a minute, it goes to this coverage. You still have deficiencies in the northwest part of the county, but again, I'll cover those in a minute. And then I'll go to the last map that I'll leave up for just a minute. We looked at all the different options and what we could do and what was the best option. We looked at an option of going with the state of Tennessee system, which is called the Tennessee Advanced Communication Network. It's a $120 million system that the state implemented about 5 years ago, and the purpose of the system was for the Highway Patrol, Corrections, TWRA, all of the state agencies. But a big part of the system was bringing local agencies on board. And in order to do that at the time, they implemented a $200 per radio per year fee in order to cover the state's cost in upgrading the equipment every 2 years, making the software changes. July 1st of this year, the state removed that $200 a year fee per radio. So that goes to the timing of the issue that we're looking at, and we'll talk about that again in just a minute. This system was the first option that we listed for the City Council to consider in work session. We also looked at an option where the city would simply build out another system like they have now, their own system. We looked at an option where we would go with AT&T FirstNet, which has push-to-talk capability on cell phones, but they do not have capability on public safety radios. And the public safety first responders could not envision a situation where they didn't actually have a radio and had to use their cell phones for everything. And then we looked at an option of that really wasn't attainable to go to digitizing the current system with no improvements in coverage. So the state system, what does it consist of? We're uniquely located here in Hamlin County. We have a state antenna in Hawkins County, a state antenna in Greene County, and a state antenna in Cocke County. Those antennas cover our county really well. But here's the new option under the state system. And if we go to this system, we'll be the first local entity in the state to implement the system. Lte Broadband. The radios today, the option available today, each radio has got a microprocessor in it. And that radio is constantly looking at which state tower is the strongest. Constantly looking for the best signal on the state towers. At any given time that it does not detect an optimum signal on the state towers, it goes to the nearest cell phone tower. And we will make a choice as a city and county whether we go with Verizon, AT&T, or another carrier. But once that decision is made, then if it's not able to detect a strong signal at a cell tower, it or at a state tower, it goes to a cell tower. You have almost 99% coverage that way, even with portables. And we have tested these portables. Again, Captain, jump in anytime that you need to correct me on anything. But we had portable radios that we tested through the city police department, a week at the fire department, Public Works, ran them about 10 days through the sheriff department, through the volunteer fire departments, and they were very, very pleased with the coverage. Very, very pleased. They had coverage in areas that they had never had coverage. Why? Again, if it didn't detect a state tower, it automatically went to a cell tower. Now, these radios did this despite the fact that we don't have our local tower built out. The optimum location for us to build that tower out is Statham Gap, which is where I showed you on an earlier slide that we had difficulty with coverage now. The highest point in the county is Crockett Ridge. The second highest point in the county is Statham Gap, or the Pine Brook Road area. There are 5 antennas on the Statham Gap, the second highest point in the county. One of those antennas is owned by the city of Morristown. Motorola and state officials have looked at that site. They describe it as an excellent site. It's an excellent tower. It's an excellent building. And they would recommend that we build out that site for our entryway into the state system. Also, because of the location of that site, it will probably handle about 70 to 75% of the city radio traffic, just because of where it's at. So that'll be important once the system is implemented. So that's where we're at. What are we talking on cost? It's expensive, but it's expensive up front, and then you have a system that is fixed for years. The initial cost up front includes the build-out of the Statham Gap site, which would be shared by the city and county on about a 60-40% split based on calls for service, 60% for the city, 40% for the county, and then the remaining cost besides the signal site would be the purchase of the radios. That price for the county would not exceed $2.5 million. It'll be less than that, but that is a not to exceed number. The cost for the city is very similar. Why is the timing right for this? It's right for several reasons. We have a 45-year-old legacy system that is difficult to maintain. We have the author and the maintenance person that maintains that system that is close to retirement. We have the availability of federal dollars, COVID relief monies. I think the county's receiving about $12.6 million, city's receiving about $8.6 million. So we have the availability of those COVID dollars to implement this system and not have to use bonds or notes or local monies. We have the removal of the $200 a year fee per radio that was effective July 1st. And we have a situation that, if implemented, would provide a permanent fix and would provide close to 99% coverage for every first responder in this city and county. Now, what would the county, which agencies would the county cover? The county would cover the sheriff department. The county would cover the volunteer fire departments. The county would cover animal control, juvenile, rescue squad, and partially EMS. The EMS coverage would be for in-vehicle radios only. So that would be the coverage for, that would be who the county would be looking at to cover in this situation. Obviously, the city would cover the city police department, city fire department, and public works. Walter State has also agreed to come on this system. They see the value of it. It will allow them to communicate with all of their campuses in East Tennessee, a situation that they do not have now. It's the best way to go. And I think you all would agree that timing is everything, no matter what you're trying to do, whether it's in your professional or your governmental or your personal life. You can do just about what you want to if the timing is right. I would submit to you as members of the commission that the timing is right to move forward with this project. And again, I want to be totally upfront with you. I was retained by the city because it's a city system and a city maintained system. But I've tried my best to include the county in the process, because without the city system now, the county would have no communications. So it's important that we work together on this and have consensus. And I would submit to you today that we have consensus from the public safety agencies and that the timing is right to move forward with this. One last thing, and I'll close for your questions. The state comptroller is in a position that they need to sign off on this project because of the federal monies. We've been in extensive discussions with them. We have submitted a lot of information to them that they've requested. They have asked us to wait until September before we issue any purchase orders, because the federal guidelines and rules now are interim guidelines until September 1st. After September 1st, they become permanent guidelines. And the comptroller is concerned that there's a chance that the federal government could change those interim guidelines before September 1st. So it would be our hope that sometime in September, the city and the county working together could move forward on this project and provide a solution that would fix a system that has needed attention for many years. But we've not been able to do anything, obviously, because of the cost. So what are your questions, Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir.
David, you said you was gonna look about building this out on Stadium Gap. Is that out Stadium Gap Road, out where the other towers are?
It is. It's actually off Pine Brook.
Pine Brook, okay.
If you'll drive down 160 and just look over that way, you'll see 5 towers.
Okay.
One of those towers is owned by the city of Morristown.
Okay.
It's an excellent tower, excellent building. Motorola and the state officials found it ready to go.
This tower, will it be owned by the city and the county?
Yes, sir. Well, it would be owned by the city.
Oh, owned by the city?
It would continue to be owned by the city.
What about the maintenance on it?
The state would do the maintenance.
The upkeep on it.
The state takes over the maintenance. That's one of the benefits of going with the state system. They take over the maintenance of the entire system. And they, every 2 years, it gets a software update. Every 5 years, it gets hardware updates. So you would never have a situation that you have now where the system has outgrown itself.
Okay,
drastically.
you don't have any more expenses then?
That's correct.
Okay.
David?
Yes, sir.
Implementing the system and Steve retiring and everything, would there be an addition or subtraction of any personnel at the 911 center?
Commissioner, I really don't see it affecting the 911 center.
Okay.
The 911 center would continue to process calls like they do and dispatch those calls. It would just be an improvement in the radio communications.
Okay, so there would be no additions or?
That's correct. No additions or subtractions.
Okay, thank you.
Who else? Yes, sir.
You mentioned all the entities that would have the mobiles. I would hope that we would include constables in on that.
Constables.
The constables are included.
Okay.
They are included, and I've had discussions with them.
Commissioner, on that 40% that the county is going to do, just like you said, the city will maintain ownership of the of the tower, but yet does that give us 40% vested interest in the structure or the equipment? Or is this just 40% that we're putting in to pay for the?
It would just be 40% that would be put into the equipment
Yes, sir.
that goes on the tower and in the building.
Okay.
The city wants to maintain ownership of that side, ownership of the tower. You know, they have other things on it, obviously, so they want to maintain ownership.
Is there any contractual agreement that we have to work with that?
We would do a contractual agreement.
Yes, sir.
Probably a memorandum of understanding or an interlocal agreement, you know, setting out for the record what happened so that the county will clearly show that the county had a vested interest in it.
Thank you, sir.
You have in your packets a spreadsheet of some of the equipment that the various different departments in the county.
Let me, Mr. Chairman, if I could just mention this one slide. If someone had asked me at the start of this how many cell towers we had in Hamlin County, I would have said 10 to 12. We have 26 cell towers in Hamlin County. Now, those are owned by the various providers, the two largest ones being AT&T and Verizon. So a decision would be made about what entity the city and county would go with. The city and county currently use Verizon for their mobile data terminal traffic, and they're very pleased with that, so I would anticipate that the city and county would continue with Verizon. But you can see, particularly on the west end, in the northwest part of the county, you can see 4 towers there, really 5 towers if you come on this side of 11E on one of them. So those 5 towers would make a big difference in the deficient areas that you saw around Panther Creek Park and those areas. They would probably be used heavily by the system.
I don't think the importance of how much what you're talking about here. Steve had a stroke, and Steve was the only one that really knew this system, and right there was our knowledge that we had for that system, and that was a scare. So this is very important, I agree.
Well, and I mean, your point's well taken. I think that the realization that Steve was near retirement really made the city think about what are we going to do. And this has been looked at before, but not in a serious way. And again, timing. Timing now is such with the federal monies and with the state removing the fees and everything that's associated with it, Steve's retirement, that the timing is now to move forward with it to fix the emergency communications for the city and county. Any other questions?
David, is it true if we didn't go to it and the city did, we wouldn't no longer have communications together with the sheriff department, police department, in our cars and stuff like that as well?
Well, not only would you not have communications with them, Captain, you would have to very quickly put together some way of maintaining an old system. I mean, let me just be honest with you. The city is going to this system, and they want the county to join them. I mean, it's symbiotic. They realize that. And you know better than anybody how important it is that first responders be able to talk with each other, interoperability. You know, I would tell you that based on my experience, particularly in Nashville, if you have a failure at an emergency event, it will rest on poor communications. You will have your failure because of poor communications. And that has happened, but I've seen situations where in the after action report, there was 0 failure in communications, and I would be able to show you an event that went well because of that. But you can have a disaster, a literal disaster, if your communications fail, your public safety communications. So yes, I don't mean to leave the impression at all that the city is just driving a bus and they're going to do what they want to do, and that's not the situation at all. But the fact is that we have to look at the history. And the history and the current situation is the county owns no public safety communications infrastructure. The city owns it and has owned it for 45 years. And that relationship has existed at no cost, obviously. So, anyone else?
And these funds, are they not covered by the American Rescue Plan funds?
Those are the funds, yes, sir.
So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Those are the funds. The county's receiving 12.6 and the city's receiving 8.6. So this would, it would be the desire of city leadership to use these funds.
Do we have a motion to?
We'll be dealing with 6.3 million this year, 6.3 million the next year, and the mayor is going to share with us at our next committee meetings where all the different agencies and groups in the community who want a piece of the pie, and we're going to have to make a decision. And this will be part of that decision that needs to be made.
Yes,
Chairman of the board, I'd like to go ahead and make that motion.
Have a motion, we got a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the commission.
Item 4C, pay increases for sanitation department. Barry Poole.
A lot of money, aren't they? Tell you what, I feel like I pale in comparison. We're down to 2 brush trucks, guys. That's what we got operating today. At the end of this week, we'll have 4 brush truck operators. We normally, if we're fully staffed, we have 6. We'll have 5 people that ride the back of the garbage truck. If we're fully staffed, we'll have 8. It's spiraling downward fast, and we could come out of it. We could get a line of people wanting a job at the door tomorrow morning, but it doesn't look that way. It's not happening that way. And so, I've called a couple of you, told you that we're spiraling downward like this, and we've got older men that are drivers that are covering for these guys that are younger and ride the back of the garbage truck, and they're not going to do that long, and so they're going to start quitting too. And so this thing's just crumbling. If it doesn't crumble, then I apologize for sounding the alarm like this, but it looks that way to me. And if we don't do something about the pay, then I really think that we're going to lose the number of people we need to make the collection, both the brush and junk and the garbage. If we get down to just a staff enough to run 3 garbage trucks, we may as well not run it all because we can't get it up with 3 trucks. And if you say, well, those 3 trucks just have to do overtime, well, they'll do overtime maybe a week or 2, and then they'll figure out there's an easier job somewhere else. So this thing's tanking. So we need to do something, in my opinion. We got truck drivers that make $12.50 an hour. That's $26,000 a year. You spend $300 a week on groceries. If you're a family of 4 and you spend $300 a week on groceries, that's $15,600. There's not much money left for the rest of life. So y'all got a lot of requests in front of you. I know you got a lot of things to consider, but these garbage trucks don't run, these brush trucks don't run, your phones will ring off the wall. This is basic, needed, very important service to this county. So I'm telling you, we need to look at doing something with this. I recommend at a minimum you appoint a committee and let's sit down, let me and my staff sit down with you and talk to you about it. Because I believe we need to, I've been doing this since '96 and I've never seen it get to this point. And the state of our nation with all the stimulus money that's went out to people and the fact that they can sit home and live comfortably is not helping us. Our work ethic continues to decline. Y'all know that as well as I do. And so I'll be glad to answer any questions I can.
Barry, I agree. This is the most tangible service our county provides, door-to-door pickup. And we need to do what we can to continue this. Have you had any studies yet in comparing salaries?
Well, of course, you know, you guys have had the salary study done.
Yes, sir.
And I've talked with Bill about the salary study. The salary study, the way he does that is he takes the top 20%. When he starts doing his research and gathering numbers from counties around us and that type of thing, the top 20% is kicked out, the bottom 20% is kicked out, and then he makes his recommendation in that 60% that's left. Well, the Morristown Public Utilities, they got garbage trucks just like us, the same operation. I know they've gone to 3 automated trucks, but they start their people out at roughly $2.50 more than we do. And we're working side by side right here every day. And I've lost three riders to the city recently. Called down there and asked the Public Works Director if he'd quit hiring my people, because obviously we need them too. He says there's a committee that does the hiring and firing, and that he's outranked by one of them, and that request didn't go very far. So
you're what is an entry level?
$11 an hour.
Okay, and you're saying that we need to go to, what do you recommend to go to?
Well, you know as well as I do, it's a ripple effect.
Yes, sir.
If we take John Doe that's riding on the back of a garbage truck and he's making $11 an hour, and we bump him up to $13.31 to equate with the city, well, every driver in that bunch is going to want that $2.50 an hour as well. And the highway guys are over there saying, hey, listen, we're out there in traffic every day risking our lives. When the snow hits, we're out there in the dark trying to remove some snow off the road, risking our lives so people can travel. We deserve it too.
So you're asking for a pay increase for every person in your department right now?
In the garbage and highway.
What's the amount?
$2.50 an hour.
No, total.
For every person? How much money is that going to cost us?
Well, there would be 22 people in the garbage. That'd cost $114,000. There would be 27 people in the highway. It'd be $140,000. I know it's a big ask, guys, but
I know, but Barry, we increased the jailer's salary because of the situation that we were in at the jail. We didn't increase the salaries of anybody else in the jail department. We increased only the jailers. I have got problems with you coming up here asking for an increase of everybody in your department. I'm willing to go along with the people riding on the back end of the garbage truck.
well,
I can understand the situation.
And
If those drivers want that amount of money, then let them apply for the job to ride on the back.
Well, I understand. I fully understand. But I have to represent what I'm hearing from my two departments, from the people in my two departments. I told them I'd go to bat for them, and I'm going to.
How many employees run your knuckle boom trucks,
There's
garbage
6.
trucks,
There's 6 on that group.
garbage in the back of the trucks?
I'm down to 4. And 2 of them are having to help out with the garbage right now.
You know, I just hate the fact that, you know, we got police officers, they're quitting over here, they're going down to the city. You know, the city pays more. I hate the fact that they're leaving your positions at your place and going down to the city because they pay more. I understand something's got to give. I don't know what.
I mean, every department, if we give all of your employees a raise, every department in the county will want a raise too.
I'm open to a better solution.
Exactly right.
But
Mr. Chairman, could we put a committee together to work with Barry and his group and try to come up with a feasible amount that could work both ways.
Yeah, even if it's incremental.
I would think that that would be a wise suggestion.
I make motion that we set up a committee to work with Barry and his department heads to come up with a figure, but this needs to be done expeditiously. So, to report back at the next committee meeting.
Name your committee.
I suggest you move quickly on this.
Motion.
I made that motion, sir.
I know, but name the committee members.
Oh, name the committee members. I think that should be the, Director of Finance Committee to appoint those. If he wants to. Or if you would like me, I'll take volunteers. I'll be one of the first.
I'll do it.
Okay, we've got two.
I'll jump in there.
Mr. Ward, Mr. Hone.
Let me ask
We need one
question.
more.
I don't think he was volunteering.
There's a guy that rides on the back of that garbage truck. Is that not considered
move
one of
first.
the most dangerous occupations in the country?
Within the last 6 months, we had a truck get hit in the back. The guy was standing on the right side of the truck. The car hit on the left side, just 2 or 3 feet away from where he was. And it's simply because he couldn't let the truck go down the road and turn left to get out of the way. He had to try to pass him the same time they got to that intersection. I mean, it is dangerous. You know that anything could happen back there. You could get your legs cut off in an instant.
Most dangerous job in the county and the lowest paid. It just doesn't make sense.
Part of that, I agree, but part of that is entry level, isn't it, Barry? Part of that is entry level, correct? Yes. So we have to consider that.
We've got 3 right now, myself, Mr. Hone, Mr. Goins. Do we need more than that, or?
Well, you need somebody from
Mr.
his
Stipp.
department.
Mr. Stepp? I was talking about from ours, and then he can,
Yeah.
I named his department heads.
Okay.
Mr. Stepp, I would think we would need a 5th, so we could have a,
I'll join.
uneven.
I'll join.
Okay.
Mr. Cutshaw, I make that in the form of a motion.
Okay. We've got a motion to form a committee. We have the members appointed. Do we have a motion?
He's
made the motion.
I'm sorry, you
I'll
have a
second.
second, sorry. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Goins. If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Barry, how quickly do you think? I mean, can we survive for a little while? I'm just asking, you're saying we're gonna be down some. Can we survive?
Those doing the substituting, it's just according to how long they'll do it. You know, substituting for the regular person.
The ball's in motion, we're going.
Well, the committee won't report to us until the committee of next month, and then it won't be approved until the regular commission meeting, so you've
It's
got
gonna be a
several.
little bit, you know, we can't.
It's in your ballpark to keep them on, Barry.
Barry, can you get your, after our committee meeting, we get everything settled here, can you get your people together and let us know a date and time, and we'll sit down and we'll all hash this out?
We can do it tomorrow if y'all can.
I understand, but we can't do it until after our committee meets.
Commission, okay.
All right, the earliest possible date.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Item 4D, a resolution to authorize cooperative purchasing agreements for use and benefit of all county departments. Ms. Bryant Hurst.
This is a similar agreement that you passed before for cooperative. It's required by the state if we're going to enter into a cooperative purchasing arrangement. This particular group is called TIPS, and they are a co-op out of Texas. And we're looking at them particularly after working with BIS. They said we could get some good pricing if we looked at this particular group for our video arraignment equipment. That's the specific need for this.
And this does not limit us from using anyone else in addition, is that correct?
No, it's just one more option.
We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
We got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Item 4E, utility audit, and it's a participation agreement.
Yes, we have used this firm before. It's been several years ago. And they basically work, if they are able to find savings in evaluating our system, then they get paid by going forward 50% of those savings for like 3 years. So if they find nothing, we pay nothing. But part of the ongoing need for this is that we're talking about a new countywide telephone system. And this is our first step to evaluate what we actually have in place before we move forward to a new system.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second? Mr. Huntsman? Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Item 4F, the 2022 Community Development Block Grant. Ms. Hurst?
There's a memo here to explaining, what's going on. It says that we have used the Community Block Development Grant Program to furnish fire trucks for East. We're in the current process of securing a fire truck for West, and this puts us in line for South.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion, we approve.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
I got
And it's just to apply.
Need a second.
James, step.
Now, is that a year off till we actually get it?
Yeah,
If we get that, how long will it be before we get
a couple of
get
years.
it?
I'd say it'd probably be
It'd be about 2 years down the road.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what I thought,
Because we
yeah,
have
that's
to
what I'm
finish
saying.
up the current one that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
And this just gets things in motion.
Is it put in motion? Okay, yeah.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Item 4H, budget amendments, Fund 101, Sheriff's Department for $3,400.
Let's look at,
Just go G first.
Oh, I apologize. Item 4G, reinstated agreement for accounting services.
this is, this is the agreement that exists between the county mayor's office and the commission to provide, I'm gonna say consolidated accounting services for everyone but the school system. And this has been in place, there's some dates in here since 2005. And it's renewed every 5 years. And then I've gone through and updated some of the language. Part of it's just updating the numbering, the spacing, but there are a couple of things I want to call to your attention just so you know that they've changed, or we're suggesting it. When this was put together, you could only have bonds for your officials, including your finance director. This puts into it explicitly the language regarding insurance for official coverage. So that's on page 6, and that's the main thing that's added there. So this has been the law now for several years, and this just puts it within our own policy. I've streamlined Article 10 on page 8, some of the information about budgets. And budget amendments following that. And then on page 14, the way this section was written, it was written in terms of warrants. The county now uses checks under a check system in the trustee's office. So this just updates a little language there to make it more modern. And I did check with county audit on these things. One of the sections on 17 has to do with conflicts of interest. Our whole system accounting, these policies and procedures are based on what's called the Act of 81. And that's codified in TCA Code 521. In that, there's a section on conflict of interest. And that underwent some changes this year in the legislature. And I've just put in the new information that has to do with conflict of interest. It was so broadly written that any employee who worked for anybody that we did business with could, like if you had possibly a part-time job at Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot, that would create a finding for the county. So so all the counties that had any kind of, I'm going to say, connection with this, you know, the legislature updated that policy. So it's, you know, a much more restricted group. The other thing that will happen here is that if you have an indirect interest, and that's only defined as an interest that's not direct. If you have a direct interest in a business, if you're the owner, own most of the stock, that kind of thing, can control it. If you have less than a controlling interest, then we need a list of those people who have those indirect interests. And we maintain that in the county mayor's office. So I've prepared a form that we can make available to folks that would, so we could keep on record anyone who might have a potential conflict of interest. And at the end of the agreement, I kind of write up a little bit about that conflict of interest and included what the form looks like at this stage in development. But again, I've got here highlighted in red all the changes, and we need to have this agreed upon ideally before October.
Do you need a motion tonight?
That would be great if you feel comfortable.
Do we have a motion? So moved. Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is that for the policy changes or the conflict of interest or both?
I thought it was both, but you want to put that as is it conflict of interest and the policy changes, or do you want to vote those separately?
Let's vote those separately.
Okay. So I guess the policy and procedure first.
Yes, I'm just calling it a restated amendment.
Restated amendment. Do we have a? Okay. Motion and a second. Chris Cutshaw's second.
Chris.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. And now we'll, do we have a motion to approve the conflict of interest?
So moved.
Got a motion, Ms. Erdenwine? Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, item 4H, budget amendments, Fund 101, Sheriff's Department for $3,400.
This rebudgets $3,400 that was received for the sale of a camper in the Sheriff's Department. It was sold so late in the year, the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2021, that there was no opportunity to make the amendment to put it back in their line item and then actually expend the funds. So this just takes the money and puts it back in the line item where it would have been. I believe that the funds will be used to outfit the trailer obtained through an EMA grant. That was
This camper we got from the military is through the 1033 program. It cost us nothing. We were going to use this camper for like a mobile command post, something of that nature, leaking horribly. We put all of that on gov deals and sold it, and that's the proceeds we got from it. We're going to take that money and try to outfit our command post.
Do we have a
Make a
motion
motion
to
to-
approve? We got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Stepp? Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Item 4H2, 101, Sheriff's Department for $100. Ms. Hurst?
This just puts an extra $100 in the uniform allowance for Sergeant.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a motion. Jim Stepp, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. 4H3, Fund 101, County Clerk's Office for $10,000. Ms. Hurst?
This is money being moved from the clerk's reserved automation account. These are funds that are collected and can only be used for automation purposes within the clerk's office. And sometimes through the year, in the data processing equipment line, right now, there's nothing budgeted there. This puts $10,000 of those reserve funds into that line item. This will be there ready for her to spend throughout this year. If it's not spent on approved purposes, it goes right back into that reserved account.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman of the Board. Chairman of the Board of the Personnel Committee, you're recognized.
I'd like to call the Personnel Committee to order. Do we have any visitors wishing to address the committee? Seeing none, in old business, we have none. In new business, we have approval of education pay submissions. This is for Lindsay Horn, received a bachelor's. It's $850. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Dean Hall? Dean Hall.
Dean,
Yes. Bobby Hall.
Dean the Rev.
All in favor, any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Item 4B, approval of military pay submissions, and this is on Dakota's Scug. Amount of $350 for 4 years of service. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We got a motion?
Second.
And we got a second. Mr. Huntsman. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Item 4C, approval of longevity pay submissions. This is for Rachel Callison and Sarah Heckema. And the amount is $225 for each of those, and that's for 3 years of service. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Got a motion? We got a second. Mr. Huntsman? Do we have any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman of the Board. Chairman Stepp of the Calendar Rules Committee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Call to order the Calendar and Rules Committee. Anyone wishing to address the committee may do so at this time.
I got a question. If I want to put something on the calendar's rules, I'll let you know about it now.
What was that?
If I want to add something to the calendar and rules for the meeting next Thursday, I'll let you know about it now.
Which would have to be voted on.
Yeah, you need to make a motion now. Yeah.
Okay? I'd like to make a motion.
Wait a minute,
Okay.
he's getting public comments. Wait till we get to the
Okay.
business
All right,
section.
well, you get back to me.
Ian Horner, 1535 Panther Creek Drive, Panther Creek Road, sorry. Mr. Stepp has obviously ignored my request for a discussion of his censure to be added. Is there anyone with the guts to stand for what's right, or do the rest of you condone his behavior? You can't dispute it unless you are blind and deaf. What's the reason? Does the rest of this commission condone rights violations, fit throwing, rude and disgusting name-calling, in this room and on courthouse property, and walking out of meetings by your fellow commissioner? Or is it cowardice? It's one or the other. If not, prove it to this county. You didn't let Commissioner Shipley get by without censure. I know y'all dislike me, but that has nothing to do with doing the right thing. What do you stand for? I'm confused. What you people profess and what you actually do don't match.
Anyone else? If not, in 3A, we have old business. We do not have any. 4A, under new business, review the regular calendar items. I have a motion.
Back in, several months ago, I tried to get the county commission to declare a referendum where we would vote whether to spend $75 million on a jail. We got a motion, we got a second, but the county commission voted it down. So they're saying, look, we're not gonna have a referendum. We're not gonna let the taxpayers have the right to vote on it. So in getting a referendum, you do not have to have 10% if the county commission instigates it. Just like it did in 2001 when we had the wheel tax. That was instigated by the county commission. And what I'm going to do is put this on, get a referendum. But the difference between what we're giving Dr. Perry of $22 million and what we're asking for $42,400 would be $20 million to go on a referendum for the April or May election this next year. And we've got time to get it on there. But let the taxpayers vote whether they want to spend any more money. It's too late to get the referendum on the 85 million, or 75 million, plus 10 for the schools. It's too late to get that. But we can still put it on there to get the $20 million. Now let's see if the taxpayers want to spend $20 million or not, instead of 14 of us stating that. So that's what I'm wanting to get on there.
Chairman, would I proceed on this?
He has a motion. You need a second.
Okay. So you put that in form of a motion.
Okay.
Put that in form of a motion.
You have a second from Taylor Ward?
I don't think I'm on that committee, though.
Huh? No, you're not on it.
He's not on the committee.
You got to have a second from someone on the committee. There's a
Motion fails, and not a second.
So the taxpayers don't get to vote if they want to spend the money or not. Thank you, fellas.
Item 4A, review of regular calendar items. Do I have a motion?
There is one change on the calendar. That's what he's asking for, a motion to approve the calendar, but we've got an addition. That, Randy, under your committee, the conflict of interest. The conflict of interest needs to be added to the agenda. Because we voted it separate.
That's right. That's on the regular calendar items,
Yes,
with the addition of conflict of interest. Do I have a motion?
Yes,
Do I have a second?
Who made the motion?
Mr. Chairman, do we not need to remove item 7D, the pay increase from sanitation department, since we're going to be reviewing that and not reporting back to the next month?
Yeah, we didn't take no action, so it automatically comes off.
Automatically comes off.
That's correct.
Who made the motion? No one. Do I have a motion?
Conflict of interest.
With the view of regular calendar items with the conflict of interest added to it.
I move that we approve the regular calendar with the addition of the conflict of interest item and the deletion of the pay increase.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Horner.
All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Did you get a second?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Horner.
Tim
Mr.
Horner.
Horner. Mr. Horner, okay.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4B, review of consent calendar items. I have a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second it.
A second. Any discussion? If not, all approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Stepp. I've got several announcements that I need to share with you, and you might want to take a pencil, a piece of paper to write these down. On Monday, August the 16th, at 5 p.m., truss-built mobile display unit will be located behind the maintenance building across from the courthouse for your inspection.
What is that?
It's one of the sales that is being bidded to go into the jail. It's the truss-built mobile display unit. If you want to see what that sale is going to look like, you need to go Monday, August the 16th at 5 p.m. behind the maintenance building, and you can see that. Now, another one of the companies that wants to bid the sales is Steel Sale of North America. So on Wednesday, August the 25th, we will go to the plant in Baldwin, Georgia. You need to be at the parking lot behind the maintenance building at 7:30 in the morning. We'll get back around 7 p.m. And if you're going to make that trip to Georgia, you need to let Trish know by the end of the business day on Wednesday, the 18th.
Is this the one that makes steel sales or concrete sales?
No, steel sales. This is another company. If you want to see what one of those sales looks like, we have to go to Georgia to see that one.
What'd you say the name of that was?
Uh,
What'd you say the name? Steel what?
Steel Sale of North America. You all got those? Okay. Also, I've been asked to share with you the timeline for the Justice Center bidding. The construction documents will be available to bidders on Monday, August the 23rd. And the bid opening will be Thursday, September the 30th. The time will be announced later. Any questions about those announcements?
Bids open on September the 30th.
September the 30th.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Caudell Construction from Alabama has qualified as an approved bidder, so we have another contractor bidding on this.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Horner. Any other announcements? If not, we stand adjourned.